So today we're going to talk about the idea of storytelling. Last week I talked about influencing and why you should be an influencer. And if you haven't listened to that, listen to the idea of being an influencer. Now, compounding on being an influencer is also being a storyteller. And the best way to be an influencer is through stories. You can call that copywriting, you can call that content creation, you can call it media production, cinematography, whatever you want to call it. Dance, magic, art, creativity, whatever you want to call it, you're being a storyteller. And you want to be able to tap into people's emotions, tap into their senses, and to be able to move them, whether you're a business coach, whether you're even a low-end employee, no matter what you do in life, if you are a storyteller, those stories stick with people for the rest of their lives. And that is how you can move societies. That's how you can do community development. So I want to talk a little bit about how to be a storyteller. And I also want to talk about some actual examples of what that might look like. So I shared something this morning that said, managers light fire underneath people, and they try to push people to be better by shoving them along. However, a leader lights a fire inside of somebody, not underneath of them, but actually inside of them. And I do an amazing job of that. And I want to share how you can do that too with your people. And you really should be not focusing on your own career, not focusing on your own goals, but you should wake up in the morning and you should ask yourself, who out there needs to have a fire inside of them? Who needs to be inspired? And how can I be a vessel for someone else's motivation, someone else's success? And the more you do that and the less you think about yourself and you think about other people's success, that's going to have compounding success around you. You're going to feel safer, you're going to feel more cared about, and you're going to find your life purpose that way too. Now, everybody has their own way they can tell a story. They have their own way that they can light that fire inside of each other. But the main concept I want to go over today is shifting over to that. So we have two complete different areas in education that I want to discuss. One is the SMILE method. So let's talk about the SMILE method. Let's talk about what that means and what that is. The SMILE method is broken down into SMILE. So you want to start out by being self-motivated. That's what the S and the M is. So to be self-motivated, you also want to look at what is the self and who am I? Why am I here? Why am I even being motivated? And how do I inspire this thing called the self? And if you're not putting 18 hours a day towards development, then you still don't really understand what the self is and what the self's purpose is. So you can also break down the self by teaching other selves, because every human has a little bit of different intricacies to them into what makes them tick, what makes them care. And the more you can break down how to teach other people, how to watch other people and see how do they get inspired, how do they get motivated, that's going to help you learn your own motivation techniques as well. I often find 99% of the time, you find your own motivation through pushing others, through lighting that fire inside of somebody else. People always come to me, they say, Matt, I'm just not motivated. I can't do that. I'm not sure what my purpose is in that. And that's because you're focusing way too much on the self and you're not focusing on other people. So for the beginning of that SMILE method, to be self-motivated, oftentimes we have to take a backwards approach to that. We have to actually look at, well, who can I help and who can help succeed? A good example of this is I was a fitness trainer in California and I had a lot of other overweight people. And they always love taking care of other people. They don't love taking care of their own body. And that's one reason that they're so overweight. So I use this trick technique with them. And I also want you to see when I'm telling you this, I'm using my own trick. I'm doing storytelling to teach you how to be self-motivating. So learn that. Always be a storyteller. So with these women in California, as you know, they're way overweight, they're really worried about their health, and But at the end of the day, they just don't eat well. They don't take care of themselves. So I did a trick with them, whereas I said, I'm new to California. I need you to lose weight for me. I need you to eat this for me, um, because I need my career to grow out here. Or I would say, I'm taking 5 people to this event, and I need you to perform well at the event because that's a reflection on me. That's my career. And if you don't perform well there, I'm going to look bad as a personal trainer. I'm going to look bad as a coach. And it created this need in their own heart to please me, to help me. And that's the only way they took care of themselves. So you can use that approach as well. They care so much. They're going to do it for you. So that's a self-motivation. Can everybody hear me here?
Yes.
Now, yes.
Well. All right, well, I'm going to go back to my Focusrite. Can you hear me on this one?
Yes.
Okay. So, as I was saying, you want to think about that with your children, but you also want to think about it with your students, with your teachers. You want to bring people.
I couldn't hear you again.
I can't hear either.
Well, I'm on another microphone.
Now I can hear you.
Me too.
Me too.
I'll stay on this microphone. It's not as nice as my other one, but at least it works. Okay, so what I was discussing is you want to use what your own problems are. So I already discussed, yes, you could take somebody else and you could find what their problems are, and you could tell them to reflect back onto you to help fix their own problems. And with a student as well, let's say that you want a lot of people to sign up on here and be your students, and that might be your goal. You're like, I want to be a teacher, I want to be an analyst. So bring students on, and then instead of dictating to them, instead of telling them what to do, let them know, say, hey, I'm pushing further in my own career. I want to get these badges over here, so I want you to do them with me. And I need you to do this to motivate me to do it myself. You need to talk to your students from a place of need. And when you talk from that place of need, people will do it. So, expanding on that, I want to go on from, so that's the S and the M, the smile and motivate, the self-motivated part. Then I want to talk about being impactful. I want you guys to make sure that no matter what you're doing, it it has some kind of impact on society. It's not just for yourself. It's not just for training. It's not just for classroom purposes. At every moment of every day, anything you do can have impact. It doesn't have to just be a trial, or it doesn't have to, you don't have to hide all of your mistakes. And a lot of people don't realize, once you get to the top of the business, you realize everything's broken at all moments. And so when you're not there right now, just accept it. Everything is broken all the time in every business. NASA going to the moon, us shooting nuclear rockets, everything, all the computers that are being built, everything is broken. Nothing is ever good enough. The best of the best of the best in the entire world, they still work with broken stuff every day. So the reason that's important for you to know to have impact, as you're learning and as you're teaching, push your students and push yourself to make a difference in society. Push to have some kind of impact. And it doesn't matter if you're good or not. It matters that you're making an effort for the actual community and not just for yourself. So don't be selfish. Self-motivated is a lot different than being selfish. So have impact with your efforts. And if you're learning new software, an internship while you're learning. But that's why it's great to give internships to students as they are learning. Give people the opportunity to break stuff. And you yourself take the opportunity to break stuff. Go into scenarios where you can break things with your own children, with your own friends. Share all of your stuff. Allow them to break it. Learning opportunity, and it has impact on you, it has impact on them, and it prepares them for the next step. And the last two parts of the SMILE are learning environment. So it's a self-motivated. So a learning environment, there's two different ways I want you to look at learning environments. On one hand, I want you to shift what you have in your house. I want you to shift what you have on your phone, on your laptop. I want you to shift everything to turn it into a learning environment. So what I mean by that, people come to me and they say, well, I can't have success there. I'm not good with that. And I always look at their environment and I think, well, no, surrounded with the right environment. If you shift your environment first and you take the first piece of being self-motivated and just motivate yourself to shift that environment, so your environment becomes educational, your environment becomes inspirational, that's actually 50% of all the work of success that you're going to need in life. So building on that, you can have a lot of books that you want to read. Go ahead and buy the books and put them on a bookshelf. Scatter those books around your room. Scatter them, set up a hammock. Set up really cool book places to go and read. Make your learning environment exciting. Ask kids what they think is exciting. So when you do all of that, you'll realize why you weren't really successful in a learning environment before. You weren't successful because you weren't really putting stuff into the right exciting environment. You would spend money on a concert, you'd spend money on nice restaurants or all this other stuff, but the educational experience, you didn't turn it into an exciting environment. So if you want to have a lot of success in life, you want to make your learning environment really exciting, really adventurous, just as much as you would some kind of entertainment project. So that's one part of the concept I want to talk about. So just think about that and share ideas with each other. When you're going on Pinterest to look up cool things for your house, shift how you look at that and start looking at educational ideas on Pinterest. Look at what other parents and other teachers and other students are doing to stay inspired on education with all of their mood boards. So on one direction, yes, I want you to focus on that. And I want you to start making your house and making all your atmospheres, making your car, making your bus ride, whatever you're doing, find ways that it can turn into a learning environment. So that's one direction. The other direction that I want you to see is that at all stages in life, no matter where you are always in a learning environment. No matter what you have, if you're in the worst prison, if you're held captive, it can always be a learning environment. You don't have to have the best toys. You don't have to have the best electronics. Every day, at every moment, you can have access to a learning environment, because that learning environment starts with your own mind, your own heart, and your own spirit desiring that. And so for this SMILE method to be successful, you need to shift into a space of consciousness to where you desire to have a beautiful learning environment, and you start that inside of you, and then that ripples out into all the spaces around you. You don't make excuses that you don't have enough money to buy all the books I recommend, you don't have the money to afford this and that. On your own cell phone, people use cell phones so much. That is a learning environment as well. You should clear out. Everybody has all these stupid pictures. You don't need 2,000 pictures of your kid with his smile slowly getting bigger on one day. That's going to take up all the memory on your phone. Save one of those photos, delete the other 1,999, and use that memory for your focus into your career, because that career is going to spill over into your children. It's going to spill over into other students. So look at the tools that you have around you. Take your phone, clear out the whole home screen, and only put things on the home screen and in your favorite nav bar that are educational. If it's not educational, then you're screwing your future over. And you have to just have that fact. I personally don't even own a phone because they're so stupid. It's a low IQ device. The only reason to ever go on there is because it's low IQ. So if you want to do high IQ stuff, use high IQ devices, and you'll have high IQ results. You'll get trips around the world. You'll have a great house. You'll have great health. You'll be surrounded by people that make amazing decisions and that take care of you. So change your learning environment and really cut in to all the entertainment pieces that you distract yourself with through life. And what will happen, a new synapses will happen in your brain to where you actually start to desire those spaces. You'll start to desire learning instead of desiring education. And you can find a middle ground there where you look for edutainment. You can find pieces of education that are also entertaining, which we call edutainment. So recapping on all of that, you want to be self-motivated and help others find their own self-motivation. You only want to do things that are impactful, and you want to shift your environment and your atmosphere to turn it into a learning environment. And that also starts with your own mind. You want your mind to be a learning environment. So that is one aspect of our entire philosophy that I want you to focus on. Another aspect of this is our belief system. And we have this on the website that you can read. But I'm going to break it down for you and give you a little bit more than just what that website says. So the belief system, I'm going to write it here in chat for you too. B-E-L-I-E-F, belief. So the belief system, I want you to start out by breaking the cycle that you're on, or breaking your student's cycle. So some people are here because they want to teach themselves. Some people are here because they want to teach others. No matter who the student is, this concept applies. You want to completely break the cycle and break the habit of what you've done before. And you want to let go of habits and lifestyle traits that got you to where you were today. Now, I'm going to say this to even somebody that's been a manager for 20 years and that has had success. You always want to continuously break that cycle. What worked for you 20 years ago, what worked for managers 20 years ago, it's not going to work as well as new ideas today. So you want to be adaptable, be an adaptogen, and break cycles, readapt to the current environment, and then disrupt your energy pattern so that you take on information in a new way. So one way to break a pattern is to go into your phone, delete out all your videos, all your photos, and replace it only with educational tools. That's definitely going to break your pattern. Another way to break your pattern, get rid of all your friends, all of them. You don't need them. You got 3 people on here that want to do education with you. That's enough in your whole life. You don't need anybody else but those people. And attach to those people, push them forward. So what you're doing, you're breaking a cycle. You don't need somebody to go out and have drinks with. You don't need to have somebody to complain about your ex with. there's so many distractions and people are not breaking their old patterns at all levels. So when you break patterns, that creates empty space so that new patterns can show up. So if you consciously break a pattern and you consciously bring in the new habit, you can make sure it's a good habit. So I want you to do that with yourself, with your students, and don't feel bad that you're breaking them out of their own patterns. That's the purpose of a teacher, coach, mentor. A student comes to you and he's 6 years old and he can't read very well. The reason he can't read is because he has bad patterns. When I was 6, I was surrounded, like swimming in books. I could read. I never had a teacher for books because I was swimming in books. So, but a kid that's outside playing all day and singing, watching TV, and all that, and then he gets really bad reading scores, well, it's because of his habits that he has. So you want to look at your own career. If you have more friends on Facebook than you have in LinkedIn, then that also means you probably don't have very much money. You need to have more friends on LinkedIn, and you need to go on that website much more than you ever would on some dumb network like Facebook. It's just useless to be over there. So the next thing I want you to do is embrace. In the belief system, I want you to embrace your student. So this goes back to what I said about encouraging the student. I want you to embrace them by allowing them to work alongside of you. Now, people with an ego have a very big issue with that. I want you to see what I've achieved in my life and who I share my time with, who me, myself, not happening. I've achieved a lot in my life, and I still give my time to the youngest students, to the most unskilled students, to people in third world countries, people that have nothing. And so for you to say, well, that person's not really there yet, I shouldn't give my time to them until A, B, or C. That is you being selfish. You need to embrace that person and realize as you embrace students and as you allow them to work alongside of you or even above you, give them your projects that you wanted to do, give them the exciting parts of your own workload, or give them the adventures that you are going to go on in your career, and then allow them to have that adventure either alongside of you or watch them succeed in it. So it could be your own children. It could be your family, your sister, your brother. No matter who it is, when you embrace others and allow their educational journey to flow through you, then you're ensuring that you have a purpose. You're also giving the best pieces of yourself. So you want to treat yourself as a vessel of knowledge, and you want to have faith that that student is going to be capable. Now, I don't care if it's a 5-year-old, it doesn't matter. When you embrace them, a good example of that is I was a lifeguard. I was about 16 years old, and a little boy came in. I had about 10 students, and they're all between ages of 2 years old and 6 years old. And I grew up in a community where if you waited till you're 6 years old to learn how to swim, you were a loser. It was more of a posh environment, and you definitely didn't want to wait till 6. Everybody got swim lessons between 0 and 4. So this kid came in. He was about 4.5, 5 years old, and he was my oldest student. And I looked at him like, oh man, I got an older kid. Like, this one's going to be slow. Maybe the family's poor. Like, why they got a kid so old in here learning? So I was working with all the younger kids, and then I would tell the older kid, I'm like, just go over there and do this. And when I told him, he did exactly what I told him to. And I realized, okay, me and this kid, we do have a bond. He does want to learn from me. So I gave all my younger kids to my other instructors, and I just worked one-on-one with this 4.5-year-old. And I really helped him learn how to swim. And I got that vision in my head out that, he's really old, he's too old to learn, from a poor family. And I shifted it into a place and said, you know what? I'm going to be the reason that this kid's amazing. I'm going to put that on my shoulders. And I embraced him completely. And I did all the tricks that I wanted to learn with him. I taught him how to do handstands. I taught him how to do flips in the pool, back dives, everything. And I had such an amazing time with him that his parents brought him back the next year and the next year. It was actually his grandparents brought him back. He didn't really have a good relationship with his parents, and I think that's one reason he was slower. Now, keep in mind, being a 4.5 and learning how to swim, that's not slow by any means. Just in the town I was in, that was considered slow. So they came back for 2 or 3 years and worked with me. That same child, he went on to go to the Olympics and become a swimmer. And my point with that whole story is when you embrace somebody 100% and you give your all to them, then they become a reflection of you. They don't even become a reflection of themselves. And that's the exciting thing about taking on students. You want to take them on and pour your heart into them so much that that's the wealth that you get when you're teaching. So that's the idea of embracing somebody. I give students out all the time. I can't take on more students. I can only handle, one human can only handle, I don't know, 50 students at a time. You just can't handle more than that. I can share these videos with people, but I can't give one-on-one attention with so many people. So the people that are closest to me, I always tell them, go out and embrace your own students. See what your own spirit can do, see what you can channel, and see how far you get with that. And 99% of the time, they always come back and they want more of my lessons. It is selfish to ask your coach for more lessons. Your purpose is not to get more, is not to be a consumer, but it's to be a creator. The more you consume in life, the more depressed you're going to be. Consumption is taking light from the outside and putting into you. Creating is taking life inside of you and pushing it outwards. When you create, you'll release great endorphins and hormones in your own body to be happy. And as you see your happiness rip out into others, that's embracing what they're capable of. And that's going to give you the most happiness and them the most happiness. And it's going to create abundance in your career and in your life. So learn to change your habits to be less of a consumer and more of a creator. And I'm going to cover that a lot more. I have a whole section just on consumption versus creation. And when you have students and you're embracing them, embrace them to go over this whole system. See them as a teacher. I mean, to think that little 4.5-year-old turned into an Olympic swimmer, and I was considering not even working with him at all because he was too old. Think about that. Think about all the students out in life that have been skimmed over and missed because their own teachers didn't believe in them. So you want to go above and beyond with your students and believe in them way more than what you've done in your own life. Because someone out there in the next generation will be able to achieve things that you can never imagine were even possible. So that moves on to the next piece of the belief system, which is to listen. So listening is an incredible skill, and you need to be able to listen to the student to see things from their perspective. You also need to be able to cater into their learning style. There's so many different learning styles. There's kinetic learning, there's sensual learning, there's emotional learning. You can learn through stories, you learn through teaching. So when you learn how to listen, you can tap in to the exact way that student learns. Everybody learns a little bit different. For example, most of the men in our company, they don't like listening to me. Like this talk I'm giving right now, they just don't like to do it. But if I give them a problem in front of them and I never coach them at all on how to do it, they love to solve problems. And that's actually how I teach them. I give them problems and I give them small projects that aren't really that important to the company. So if they break it, it's not that big of a deal. But I do that as a teaching tool. I take somebody on that's not really ready as a male and I give them 50 problems, and a year later they become pretty good at it. That's because they love to learn through action. Now I'm generalizing, but the majority of the women, they love to learn through listening, they love to learn through participating, and you're going to find a complete different demographic on that side. So it doesn't matter who it is, you want to be able to tap into your student and see what is their learning method, what style works best for them, and then you want to actively listen. So listening is not just about you sitting there and consuming whatever they're telling you. You want to actively listen and talk back to them and repeat back to them what you think they said. You want to use different types of pedagogical methods to tap into what they're saying. And as you're listening, you can figure out by hearing them repeat what you said and by watching and observing, that's the best way to tell if whatever you're trying to teach is being absorbed. For these gentlemen, for example, I'll give them projects and it might be a year before I can really tell if they're absorbing it or not, because I give them recipes and then I want to watch that recipe as they do it. And the cool thing is, the more quiet you are with students, the better they do. When you give them a recipe and then you just say, here's the recipe, go do it, I believe in you. And then you sit back and watch, you sit back and listen. It's amazing how much they take over themselves, and you more want to get out of the way of your student instead of being there as the teacher. Now, not only do you want to listen to the student, but you want to listen to society. You want to listen to your entire community, and you want to listen to the global community. So on one hand, yes, you're listening to the student and you want to tap in and see, well, what passions does this particular student have? And, you know, some students, they just naturally gravitate towards analytical stuff. Some naturally gravitate towards artistic stuff. So you want to listen to those passions they have, and then you want to align them with parts of society that need that. And you need to be able to tap into the future to see where in the future is this student's skills going to be useful. You can't just teach them stuff that you know today. You definitely can't teach them stuff that you learned in high school or middle school or even college, because that's the past. That stuff is useless. You need to teach them for the future, and you need to be able to listen to the future to figure out what that is. If you're not listening to the world leaders, and if you're not seeing what they're building for 10, 20 years from now, then you're not accurately giving lessons to your students. You need to see what the core of the focus of the future is going to be, and then give that. You can also listen to all the students combined, and you can tell, you know, if you just have one kid or if you just have one student, that's not a large enough body for you to listen to. You want to have a lot larger audience than that, and then you want to get feedback from all of them, ingest all of their feedback. Some of them are going to tell you that your lessons suck. Some of them are going to tell you that your lessons are too long. Some are going to say they're not fun enough, or maybe you try to make it too fun and they say it's not serious enough. Whatever it is, you need to listen to that collective body and adjust your lessons appropriately. So moving on, we have the I in the belief system, and that is interact. And the interaction is very similar to embracing the student, because when you embrace a student and you let them work alongside of you, naturally there should be interaction that's happening. So when I say interact, it means don't only preach to people, don't only give them tests and quizzes. Make your learning lessons extremely interactive, and make them so interactive to the point that you see the student doing more than you're even doing. Make it extremely hands-on. There's some crazy things you could do. For example, that little kid that I was teaching, I was telling him, I said, hey man, you should be a lifeguard. You can come here and watch the kids for me. And I brought him to the pool and I had him watch all the other kids. I said, tell me if anybody's drowning. Look if anybody can't swim very well, and then point them out to me. And I taught him way above and beyond, taught him how to do CPR and all this other crazy stuff that doesn't really have much to do with the one little focus of learning how to swim. But when you make it that interactive and you let them work alongside of you, it sparks curiosity in them. Like with that kid, it made him go on and become an Olympic swimmer. And with other kids, you don't know what it's going to do for them when you allow them to be interactive with it, when you allow them to use every single sense in their body to learn. And a lot of people feel like students are a burden, and they're like, oh man, I have to go teach today, or you know, my kids are here, I wish I had a babysitter. I see kids, like, bring your kids to me. They'll do all my projects for me, my house will be clean, you know, all my websites will be put together, they'll give my videos for me. It's interactive learning. I mean, think to be 8 years old, it's an opportunity for an 8-year-old to have the privilege of touching a company. They just feel, a story on that, I was putting together a computer. It was about $2,000 for a little kid. He had just gone from giving up all of his toys, like Pokemon and all of his card games. And I said, if you do a yard sale and you give all of these away and you sell all of these, we'll use all that money and we'll build a really high-end computer for you. And then you can start learning how to be a teenager, and you can start learning computer programming and all this other stuff. So he was excited about it. I helped him sell off all the toys. We ran, I think, 3 different yard sales. And then we also put some of the bigger items up on eBay. I had him open up his own eBay account, and I taught him how to do all of it. Now, if I did all of that myself, I probably would have just donated this stuff to Goodwill, and I would have just paid for the computer. But I wanted to give him an interactive lesson to teach him how to manage finances, how to let go of things that he used to care about a lot, but when he does that, how that can get you new items. So it was a beautiful lesson for a little kid. And it was really hard for him to let go of some of this stuff. He had so many toys. You know how kids are. His grandparents bought him stuff, and his mom bought him stuff, and just so many toys everywhere. And I said, you have to choose up to, $1,500 worth of stuff. And can you believe a little 8-year-old has $1,500 worth of toys? It's just crazy. So he sold like a PlayStation and a little pocket PlayStation. I don't know what they're all called. But it was so hard for him to let go of that stuff. And when you do things for the student and you don't make it interactive, they're not going to learn the real life lesson. So after he sold all of that, the next step was getting the computer. So it was $1,500 or so. All the parts came in, and I put it together for him, with him at his house. So we laid out all the pieces on the floor, and I've done that a lot, but instead of me building it all for him, I made it. That also was an interactive lesson. It took us probably 4 hours to put that entire computer together, and he was dealing with his, ADHD, ADD, just being, he wanted to run all over the place. He wanted to shoot water guns. It's like, dude, if you want this computer to work, you have to put it together. And, it's a very complex Lego project. So make things interactive like that, because the sense of satisfaction and the sense of knowing that you can do something all by yourself, that's what you really need to give students. That's what you need to push your students to achieve. If you do it for them, or if you give them the easy way out, they're never going to accurately learn the lessons of life. So after he built all of that, then I taught him how the software worked. This was probably a 2-month-long summer project that me and him worked on. This was not overnight at all. And I forget how old he was, maybe 10 years old. But he was definitely at the age where he could have been playing with Pokemon for a few more years, and that might have seemed normal. And I was being a catalyst to his education by pushing him to take on these more complex projects, pushing him to, build a whole computer. And his mom saw all these parts out there. She saw how expensive it was. She was like, whoa. She's like, why don't you just do that for him? That's expensive. I don't want him to break anything. And I had the opposite perspective. I said, well, I want him to break something so that he realizes what patience looks like. So he realizes where anger comes from. Like when you sell your own PlayStation and then you get parts for it, those parts come in, and then because you're careless, you break one of those parts or you bend it, that teaches you how to be humble, how to have harmony and a gentle touch. And I've always given students that kind of power over their own projects, and that's what turns people into leaders. So make everything extremely interactive. With that boy in particular, he became top of his class in everything that he was learning, and he went from kind of like the younger kid that got picked on, that was tiny, to the class leader. Still tiny, but just very intellectual and logical, and seen as a leader of his friends. So those little intricacies that we do with children or with any student, that's what shapes how they see themselves in the future. So that brings me on to my next part, which is evolve. So in the belief system, I want you to evolve yourself and evolve with the student and evolve your lessons. So to evolve, what I mean by that is you need to change your viewpoint, your label, and your title that you give to your student. When you've had a student, if it's your own kid, if the student's yourself, you look at yourself in the mirror and you view yourself, you judge yourself, you give yourself a title. I'm just a mom. I'm just a daughter. I'm just, I'm just a scientist. Whatever it is that you label yourself, everybody wants to get to the next level. You can't get to the next level if you keep repeating the exact same title over and over and over. You have to change the title first. You have to change the perspective first. The action comes after the title change. So change that title, change that perspective first, and then let yourself grow into that. Let your student grow into that. So some examples of that is if you have a student that is 6 years old and they're learning the basics of how a computer works, the basics of how a mouse works, basics of a keyboard. By the time they're 8.5 years old, if you are still with that same student, whether it's your own son or whether it's you're an elementary school teacher, you're actually more of a problem to them than you are a benefit to them based upon your own lack of evolving the relationship. Because as soon as you shift that teacher, as soon as you shift the kid to a new teacher, the new teacher all of a sudden no longer sees the 6-year-old. All they see in front of them is the 8-year-old. And all they see is the potential that they want to release. And a good example of this is I had a guy that came to me in California. He was about, I'd say 60 pounds overweight. He was super gay, super just artistic. He ran a theater. And I put an ad out, actually. I wanted somebody to do workouts with me. And I didn't want to tell them I was a personal trainer because I was tired of coaching people. I wanted to have just a buddy to work out with. So this guy showed up and he was horrible. He was the worst option I could have possibly picked, but he was really passionate and he wanted to do it. But he was sloppy. He wasn't safe at all. He was way overweight, horrible diet, just completely different personality than somebody I'd ever hang out with. So I thought, you know what? I have all these personal trainers working for me. If I let him work out with those trainers for 9 months, then they could shape him into somebody that I'd actually have fun working out with. So that's what we did. I sent him to one of our trainers, and he was way overweight, literally never had worked out in his life. So for 2 months, he worked out with one of our trainers, and she's a professional surfer, model, competitor, just really hardcore. And in 2 months' time, she helped him drop about 15 pounds and taught him some of the basics of workouts. Now, the problem is she didn't evolve with him. So after he dropped 15 pounds, she felt excited. She's like, look at my client. He lost 15 pounds. That's good. But that wasn't good enough for me. I wanted him down to my shape. I wanted him to be really athletic so I can go on runs with him, biking, swimming, all kinds of cool stuff. So I took him away from her and I put him in with another trainer. So on the very first day that trainer sees him, that trainer says, oh, okay, this is Chris. He's 45 pounds overweight. Whereas the first trainer saw him and saw, oh, this is Chris. He's 60 pounds overweight. So everybody usually gets a client, gets a student, and then they put a limit on what they're capable of doing with that student. They say mentally, they're like, okay, well, if I can help Chris lose 15 pounds, then that means I'm a pretty awesome trainer. So the next trainer, once again, helped him lose about 15 pounds. He was then down. He needed to lose about 30 pounds. So that took about 2 months. I kept on doing that. I kept rotating him from trainer to trainer until he was down to very good shape. He got to the point that he could not only keep up with me, but it was exciting for me to go and work out with him because he had worked with 5 different trainers at that point. He had lost all 60 pounds, and he had not only lost the weight, but he had dynamic and versatile information from all the trainers he'd worked with. So if you're a student, you need to see that your teachers will always limit you. 99% of the time, I will never limit somebody. I'm going to tell them that they're God and they can they can change the world. You have very few trainers like me that will push you way beyond your furthest limits, even in human capacity. But 99% of all coaches, all teachers, they're going to limit you. So know that they're going to limit you and have 5 teachers instead of 1. And then if you yourself are a teacher, embrace other teachers as well. Know that even though someone else might be trying to have the same job as you, same kind of clientele as you, it's okay to let your own students say, hey, go work with them for a few months and come back. And just rotate your clients around, rotate your students around. And if you yourself are the student, go seek out the teacher that your own teacher told you never to talk to, because that's probably the teacher that's going to give you a different perspective, that sees you with a different title. So my point in all of this, you want to evolve with your students and you want to evolve yourself, so you never put those mental limitations on what your student's capable of. And then you also don't want to limit what the future is capable of. Because if you're teaching something that's very successful today, you want to evolve with that 5 years from now, 10 years from now. You would definitely want to stay realistic, but you also want to be fully aware of the power you have as a teacher, because whatever title you give a student, that student usually keeps that title the rest of their life. You hear people all the time, Michael Jordan talking about his own teacher that didn't believe he could ever play basketball. You hear all these great people. Einstein got kicked out of school for low math scores. All these people look up to their teachers and they expect their teachers to be the reason they're successful. They look at the teachers to give them labels. So you have so much power in somebody's entire life, whether it's your own child or whether it's someone else's child, to give them a label. So be very, very careful on what that label is and how small of a label you give somebody. And if you're with the same student for more than a year, then you need to separate from that student, clear your mind, and then reapproach that student with brand new curiosity yourself as a teacher, so you can provide them the best amount of realistic coaching that you can possibly give. So that brings me to my last piece of all of this, which is to foresee. I want you to be able to foresee the future, to tap into clairvoyance, and to be intuitive with the market, be intuitive with how education works, be intuitive with your student, and to be intuitive with what careers are going to be available to that particular student. You also want to foresee, you want to see the different genders, the different ethnicities, the different cultures. You can't take somebody so far out of their own culture, of their own gender, and expect them to be successful unless you're going to pull the weight for them the entire way. You can't take somebody that's in a wheelchair, and if they sign up for just 5 lessons with you, you can't say, well, I'm going to make you an Olympic runner in a week. That's not having foresight. That's not being realistic with your goal. So you also can't take somebody that is born in Africa, in Kenya, and is female and tell them they're going to be president of the United States. You have to be realistic with where we are in society today. And that's a very big part of being a teacher. You have to give them realistic goals that they can actually achieve in this lifetime. Now, saying that, I do like to break barriers. So definitely don't forget, number 1, definitely break them out of the mold and help them see something brand new they never thought was possible. But at the same time, have foresight into, look at the low-hanging fruit in the world. And Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, he said, for example, we're trying to hire every single engineer we possibly can. He said it's not about what their skills are. It's not about what degree they have. If they're an engineer in computer programming, we want them. The entire world just is not kicking out enough engineers for us to hire everybody. So as a teacher, think about that. That's why I have our current program set up how we do. It's not like, I'm also a ballroom dancer. I could push everybody and say, everybody needs to be a ballroom dancer. But I don't have faith in, when I'm looking in the future, that if I make 2 million ballroom dancers, there's going to be enough jobs for all of those 2 million people. I do have faith, though, that if I made 2 million computer programmers, there's absolutely 2 million jobs for them. So it's not me that's passionate about programming or what I'm pushing on the students. It's what the community is passionate about, what the career paths are being open for. You want to have that foresight, and you don't want to have ego, and you can't let your own interests influence your students. You need to give them tangible goals for their own future, not for your future, but their future. If you're working with a 7-year-old, think about that. They're not going to need a job for 20 years. So you have to think, what is the job market 20 years from today? And how can I help this child achieve that? And if you yourself are 15 years old and you have a teacher, you have to realize most teachers are very, very out of touch. And it's going to be up to yourself to make sure you're picking a career path that's relevant for 10, 20 years in the future. All right, so I'm going to look over my notes to see if I missed anything else on that foresight. Yeah, I guess to wrap that up, I would also say just look at that own student's interests and look at what they're capable of. We definitely want to open the student up to where they have a high IQ, high SQ, high PQ. You want to really help them on all these areas, but you still want to honor what strength that they have and what is the lowest hanging fruit for them. And you want to give them foresight for all the little micro chapters they're going to have in life. So a 10-year-old can take an internship today. They don't need to wait till they're 20 to have an internship. If you have a 10-year-old out there that wants an internship, I'll give him one. He can work with me. And then 2 years from now, after he's done an amazing internship, you can then give him new foresight into the next step and the next step and the next step. The best coach out there, the best teacher out there, has multiple small chapters and hits multiple small goals, and all of those need to have wow factors to them. You have no purpose in a student's life unless you're delivering multiple wow factors. When they come to you, they shouldn't be hitting a lateral move. They should be coming to you as a coach to leap and jump far beyond what they're capable of all on their own. So have foresight into what the market needs today that they're capable of, and then all the teeny tiny steps that that student can do from now for 10 to 20 years from now, so that there's harmony in all the steps they do. So 20 years from now, they have a beautiful career, a beautiful life, and they can look back and they say, you know what, my teacher helped me with that every step of the way. And I would say out of everything we do, having foresight is where I can come in and help you the most, not only in your own career, but in your own students. So if you get a 10-year-old that says, hey, I want to coach with you 20 hours a week, and I want to do everything you tell me to do, well, that's a lot of power you have, and you might feel overwhelmed with all that power. So it's okay. You can come to me, you can come to our system, and you can see what we're recommending for those students, what we're recommending for their personalities, and then you can know that you're working with very high-end educators to make sure that you're not the only person that's taking on the responsibility for that student. So that's everything I wanted to cover today. We covered the SMILE method and we covered the belief system. And I want you to use both of these equally in our pedagogical method when you train people. So at this point, let's talk about if you have any questions on this or if you have any questions on how to apply it. Actually, okay, now I can hear.
Lara, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was thinking about it, but go ahead. You go ahead.